Damon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, you're welcome. Nice to be with you.
Now, you are one half of a duo that is called South Africa's foremost documentary filmmakers. It's a big honor because many publications have featured your work. And won't you just tell us, in a sense, what it is you and your brother Craig do?
Well, I think firstly there are many wonderful South African filmmakers, all that work all over the world. So we just, I suppose, a small part of it. But we, I suppose, focus on the relationship that people have with nature and with animals in an African context. And that's really been, I think, a constant theme throughout all our work.
Now, speak to us about some of your documentaries. I know you've made many, but when one watches the films that you and your brother create, what are we watching?
I think it's really what we feel when we are in sort of remote rural Africa. There's a special energy, a magic that is all around you. And as a filmmaker, you're quite limited. You really have a small little camera and maybe a microphone and some technical equipment, but you're trying to express that incredible raw power that the people have, that the landscape seems to have, the power of place. And that's something that when we left South Africa many years ago and we worked overseas for a short period, there was this sort of roaring silence that we didn't feel. And when we came back into, normally it's in remote wilderness areas, we just felt that, and the reciprocity that people have in that environment with the landscape. We're trying to portray that through as I said, the limited means of film.
Now, usually when you see documentaries about Africa, they're being made by the BBC or some type of international organization, but really you have two Africans telling stories about Africa. Does that change your storytelling perspective?
I think it does. We were, I suppose, lucky enough to be at a time period in filmmaking in Africa where we wanted to put Africa's voice first. So we basically make films where African people tell their stories. It's a first-person narrative often. We don't have this often what's called the voice of God that comes down as a voiceover. So real people are telling their story, and it's more intimate, it's more personal, and obviously more real. And people are intricately involved in the environment. They come across animals. They have a daily life interaction with nature, with animals, and that's what we're trying to put across, and that's what the people themselves want to express. And in the past, we've seen in filmmaking, as you said, like the BBC classical approach is to separate people, and you have these beautiful scenes of animals doing beautiful, amazing things, beautifully shot, but somehow there's an absence of people, and you don't find that in reality. So we never approached it that way, and our approach is to bring people into it and put the people's wisdom and sort of trying to portray their relationship with nature.
Now, in doing this, you've traveled to many incredible places and had to do some pretty amazing things. Won't you talk to us about some of the experiences? I'm thinking specifically about an article I read online about you two and the insane places you had to sleep and the things that you ate, but apparently you drew the line at something called stomach water, if I remember this correctly.
You have a good memory, but I think the privilege we have is to access these places, and it is extreme. I mean, people are, they haven't got the luxury of popping down to the local shop and buying food, and they live an extreme lifestyle, and often we can't come with our beautifully packed food and cold drinks and sort of integrate and be accepted into that community. So we have to really, allow them to trust us and live with them as they do. But there is when obviously in the desert conditions in the Kalahari in Namibia and Botswana, what local San Bushmen often do is they use the stomach water of an animal that they've killed. So it's the intestine, it's all the grass the animal's been eating, and they squeeze the juice out of it and drink that as liquid, and that's quite harsh.
I can imagine.
But I suppose in a cultural context, if you've grown up with that, it's normal, and that's what's special. When you see that from the outside, it looks just incredibly extreme, and for them, it's the daily life which they've accepted.
Now, you work with your brother day in and day out. How did this collaboration begin, and why did you two decide that film was going to be the thing you pursued?
Well, we grew up, I suppose, in Cape Town under the sort of watchful eye of our grandmother, who's sort of in her 90s now, 93. And she used to go off into Africa in many years ago and come back and tell us these stories of being charged by elephant and hippos and crocodiles. And of course, as a young kid, it was an incredibly exciting sort of concept. So we were dying to get up into Africa. And film was just, I suppose, a progression of that, and to try and express those feelings and those amazing energy that we felt when we did eventually get into wilderness. Film was the most powerful, I think, and the most exciting way of expressing that energy.
Now, there must be certain challenges that come with working with a close family member. Have there been any, and how do you deal with them?
I think we incredibly lucky to be able to work together as a siblings, as brothers, and it's mainly because we don't need to communicate on a certain level. We know each other, so well that if we at a scene, or we know there's a problem, or there's something we have to overcome, we can both read each other, so you don't have to explain too much, and that makes it simpler in some ways. And as your brothers and sisters and your family, you can't divorce yourself from them. So you're in it, and it's been it's been a huge blessing to be able to work together like we have. And I think it makes it more exciting because you can bounce things off each other, and there's no sort of ego involved or trying to sort of get one up on each other. You've grown up like that. So I think it's been a huge benefit to the work, and been, obviously, from an enjoyment point of view, so much nicer.
Lovers of film and lovers of Africa will be able to get a sense of your work during the upcoming Sense Africa. Now, won't you explain to us what it is and where we can see it?
Well, we were approached a while ago to sort of put some of our films out in a festival locally in Cape Town, and there's quite well-known organisers of film festivals that have done this before, and they approached us and chose a selection of films that we opened at the Baxter as an opening night, and then it runs at the Labia. And it really just is I suppose now we're looking back, it's over sort of 15 years of making films, and it is quite a rich tapestry of diversity. As we've worked a lot in Africa, we've worked in Central America, we've worked in Antarctica. So suddenly when you see it put together on a little sort of film schedule, I think it's quite a nice diversity of films. But something it taps into, if you feel strongly about your connection, or trying to explore your connection with Africa. I think there's quite a bit to watch, and the films are, I think, they tap into something which is not potentially normally what you see on TV. They're something slightly different. It's not a real commercial film often, so it's nice for a festival platform like Sense Africa.
Now, where can we go to find out more about your work and to purchase any of your films? Where can we get this information?
There's a senseafrica.com website. That's probably the easiest way of accessing it. And if you Google Sense Africa Festival, you'll also find the details in the program.
Well, thank you so much for joining us today.
It's a pleasure. Lovely to be here.